For most of human existence, the meaning of life was very, very simple. Survival. The only thing that humans cared about was just surviving, because it was so difficult for the early years of human existence on this earth. If you look at a human being as a survival organism, just by itself, naked, they are among the most feeble at that task in the entire animal kingdom. If you look at ourselves as biological agents, everything about our body is set up for one mission, and that is survival. Every reflex we have, every element of our structure is just built up on the battle to survive. They elevated themselves through the use of technology and social structure to the top of the food chain. You compare us with predatory animals. We are weak and soft. But if you take that same human and put them in a group and you give them basic technology, steel, a spear, a knife, he goes from the bottom of the food chain to pretty much at the top. And that's where it all got interesting. Because an organism whose only interest was in survival had, for the first time in their history, a more or less guaranteed survival. Humanity found itself in a crisis that emerged out of its own success. For most of its history, their only interest was the battle to survive, and they did it. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. They got through ice ages, droughts, famines, disease, everything. And they found a way to get to the top of the food chain. And so the big question now is, now what? We survived. There's no more danger. The average human being finds himself in a world now where there's almost zero danger from predatory animals, where getting a meal is the easiest thing ever. It's not problematic at all. Where the majority of infectious diseases, medical complaints can be resolved in a hospital fairly easily. And we found ourselves grappling with a whole new issue that had never occurred to our ancient forefathers, but which now becomes one of the centerpieces of our modern lives. They start casting their mind around, okay, what do I do now? And so the minute mankind's existence became more or less guaranteed, the problems shift from survival to meaning. And what one person will describe as a meaningful life, another person will decry as meaningless or wasted. Yes. If you look at animals in the animal kingdom, the pattern of their life is very simple. They take the least risk possible to secure their existence. Lions are powerful creatures, but when they go hunting, they typically go for the weakest animals they can kill in order to eat, because they don't want to take the risk of injuring themselves. It was hard to win the battle for survival, but it's 10 times harder to win the battle for meaning. There's something terrible about the idea that we're sitting around, waiting for meaning to show up on our doorstep. But what I find the best people do is they take charge of it, and they look at their lives in a form of authorship, where they see their life as a tale to be written. I do believe that humans have a deep and abiding need to follow the interests of a group bigger than themselves as an individual. Is it ideal? No. Is it an answer to the meaning of life? Nope, because eventually that group will itself die out. The moment you see yourself as the be-all and end-all of your existence, you're in for a meaningless life, and nothing will ever satisfy you. You can have all the money in the world, you can have all the power in the world, you'll be empty inside. But I do believe that in order to live a happy life, meaning is a central part of that, and the deepest sense of meaning is to find something which hopefully does very little harm to the people around you and mostly benefits them, which enables you to become part of a community and to live, as I said, for something larger than you as an individual. I'm a human being, and like any human being, I'm biologically programmed to be terrified of death. Every physical element in our bodies is designed to keep us away from death. I'm no different from anyone else in that regard. A much deeper question, which is presumably, are you afraid of non-existence? What comes after your physical death? I'm fully aware that there's going to be a time I don't wake up, but are you going to be afraid of it? Is there some mortal terror you have of this? No, you didn't have it before. You don't have it when you sleep. Going from the fact that you know you won't wake up to terror is two different things. That's an extra step. And at that point, you're making a choice at that point. We always talk about our death as though there was only one, but we all have two deaths. There was a time before you were born when you were dead. You weren't afraid of that period of non-existence because you know what it was like before you were born. It was just nothing. Every time you go to sleep at night, you get a sneak preview of death. It's just this kind of nothing happens. You wake up in the morning, you're alive again. I do believe that death is the single most important element in life that gives value to our days. If you think, for example, of a situation where a god came to you and gave you immortality, life would be very, very different. The moment you gain immortality, you can always put every project off. You can always say, I don't need to do this today because I can do it 4 centuries from now. It'd be a terrible... burden to be immortal. You would life would be in many ways very hollow and meaningless, I think. People talk about death taking away the meaning of life, but I think immortality would have a very similar effect in a different direction. I will disappear, but there's far greater things than me that will disappear. I mean, it's crushing to think that there's going to come a time when no one will ever hear Beethoven's symphonies again, that the mysteries of the pharaohs will be lost and no one will even comprehend that they once existed. We're all very, very small players in a very big game. It was hard to win the battle for survival, but it's 10 times harder to win the battle for meaning.